asking, they're asking you to tear up the rule book and somehow override the deed restriction on lot 16. Then I don't think you can do that. All right, the third objection, harm to the character. Take a good look at some of the photos that I provided you, please. I take umbrage with the applicant's written statement that there would be no impact to adjacent properties in the neighborhood. There are a lot of factors to a neighborhood's character. In this case, neighborhood is not a large geographic area like St. James or head of the harbor, for instance, but rather a somewhat secluded cul-de-sac of 8 lots, which is out of direct visual sight of other homes in the area. Allow me to enter into the record several landscape photographs to visualize the current environmental character of the cul-de-sac, particularly the circle end. Photo 2A is looking south at the intersection of Thompson Hill Road. So you're looking down Skunks Hollow at the intersection of Skunks Hollow and Thompson Hill. This is a pleasing sight that every resident enjoys. This is the natural vista, a panorama of thick vegetation and full leaf that I referred to in my opening remarks. Photos 2B and 2C show the vista from the midpoint on Skunks Hollow Road, closer to the circle, also in thick leaf and after the leaves have fallen. So you're seeing it in leaf and without leaf. And what do you see? A panorama of woods. That's heaven on earth. I enjoy my house, as do my next door neighbors, the Millers on lot 3. They get very similar views. And so there's a photo there, I think, of my view. When I look out from my porch, I'm almost looking at lot 16. And I see a piece of the Rooney's house, and I see the woods, and I see woods, and I see heaven on earth, like I said. Just very lovely, very enjoyable. Exactly why we came there 40 years ago. All of that will be destroyed, ripped up, torn away. Come on. Imagine 2 driveway aprons crammed into a short 56-foot curb. Now that's the actual curb length, both by calculation looking at the surveys and by pacing it off. I was a soccer referee, so I know a 3-foot step. And so I did both, verified 56 feet. But what do you see when you look at that 56 feet? You got a fire hydrant, you got a catch basin. Now the catch basin, right in front of lot 16, is the lowest point on Skunks Hollow. It collects all the rainwater. Can now imagine 2 driveways exiting somewhere between the fire hydrant and over or around the catch basin. I can't figure out how they're going to do this yet. That's what the planning department will try to figure out. Pouring water right into the catch basin. The catch basin overflows right now. So that's photograph P5. It indicates that we have a drainage problem. It is real. So that picture was taken after a brief downpour. It wasn't hurricane rain. It was very brief. Maybe it lasted 20 minutes, 30 minutes, came down. It wasn't torrential, but it was heavy. And it just filled up with water, and it couldn't dissipate. It couldn't handle the rain rate. So I think, as Brian Miller mentioned, you know, the weather's getting worse. We're seeing more and more storms. I just can't imagine this environment with 2 driveways, given the conditions that we have, and sensitive slopes, you know, 5 years from now, when the weather's, if it continues doing what it's doing now. So since the current catch basin isn't sufficient to handle the rain rate, how worse will it be when the trees are removed? Blah, blah, blah. I've said that before. Now, considering the aesthetics as part of our neighborhood's character, the spring and summer view of this vista is plush with leaf. You can see it in the pictures.
Is that the last page?
8.
Oh, my God.
Just to get a feel. That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
So considering the aesthetics as part of the neighborhood's character, the spring and the summer view of the vista's would leave. The fall is colorful. I mean, it's just gorgeous in the fall. And the winter view with snow cover accentuates the I call it a mini forest because that's what it is. You see all these trees standing there. There are quite a few trees. And it's nice. That's why we came there. Much of this would be gutted if the applicant is allowed to do it. The overall character of the cul-de-sac reflects also a very low level of traffic. A peaceful and quiet neighborhood of 8 homes, 4 on the southerly end, that's the circle. The homes are a meld of mostly traditional Smithtown colonials and ranches. I showed you my house, it was a ranch house. The only thing I really did to its exterior was to put stone on it to make it more attractive. It had old cedar shingles that got really blackened. But the houses are 50 years old, 40 years old. They're not new modern houses. And this is the entire neighborhood. It's very lovely, and it reflects the character of Smithtown. I was on the internet today, and I found out that the applicant is already advertising the house for sale on Lot 1. Had a picture of it, had the price, it was $1 million, $1 million. Huge, 3,500 square feet, 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. That's only one house. I imagine Lot 2 will be basically the same, very similar. But when you look at the house, you say, oh, it's a nice-looking house by today's standards. Yeah, but not on Skunks Hollow. It doesn't fit the character. It's modern. So just the look of it, you would say it's out of character. Forget all the other things about character. The construction and architecture of the house doesn't work. And there'll be 2 of them. So then we'll have 4 houses, traditional Smithtown, Dan's nice house. Yeah, kind of traditional Smithtown. And then these 2 monstrosities up on the hill looking down. Tell me that doesn't affect the character of the neighborhood. Now, at night, the dim street lighting and the quiet and the darkness afforded by the mini forest on the south side of the cul-de-sac, that's the area of Lot 16, and the wooded New York State property buffer on the east side of Skunks Hollow Road add much to the ambiance of the neighborhood. What a few night lights will have affords a comforting glimpse of our neighbors while maintaining separation and privacy. I mean, just imagine, it's just nice to be there in the evening time, little bit of dim lights, low noise, heaven. The applicant's proposed tree removal plan shows that half of the significant trees that were marked by the surveyor on the tree removal plan would be removed, which amounts to 50 of the 100 that were marked. Those removed are the ones in the vista foreground that provide the most beneficial landscape feature. In its place, 2 50 by 40 2-storied houses elevated on the high ground of the rising terrain and towering above the cul-de-sac, 2 more driveways, more parked cars, SUVs. And when I saw the house, I thought maybe to have 2 cars. It's going to be a 3 or 4 car family. There's no doubt about it, and there'll be 2 of them. I don't know how many cars and SUVs we're going to end up. And they're going to have a 56-foot curb. They can't even park. They got a fire hydrant and a catch basin, and then they have these cars and 2 driveways with the aprons. I mean, it's impossible. It's just impossible. I don't know where they had the nerve to come up and take your time up with such an outrageous application.
All right. Excuse me, sir.
Can we just take a break? Yes, change the tape. I'm taking that much time? Of course you can take a break. I have nasal drip, so
Thank you.
I can
Thank you
use
very
the
much.
water.
We're going to
Thank
take a
you.
5-minute break.
Thank you for bearing with me. You're very patient. So we talked about the 2 50 by 40 2-storied house on the high ground. So we're adding cars, we're adding driveways, mailboxes, lampposts, lighted lampposts for driveways, edge lighting, and a lineup of trash cans weekly, not to mention less quiet. So that's why I brought up the dim lighting that we have now. It's dim enough and it's pleasant, you know. You can see we have neighbors, it's a comforting feeling. Now we're gonna have 4 driveways all lit up. Oh, it's Luna Park. You know, it's gonna look like an airport. The plan shows buffer zones for the trees that were removed, preventing further tree removal, but they do not mitigate the problems cited in my remarks, nor is there any guarantee to prevent further encroachment into these buffers in the future. Swimming pools, accessory buildings, etc. So you can't guarantee it. So the existing neighbors take no comfort that these buffers will prevent future disturbances to the remaining natural vegetation. The proposed plan is just out of character with the adjacent properties and country-like ambiance we enjoy. The reasonably even placement of our homes around the circle would take an imbalanced and crowded look from inserting 2 never planned for 2-story homes between lots 5 and 6. Then there is the issue of parking space on the circle. I mentioned that. Fire hydrants, catch basin, 56 feet, and then 2 driveways. Arguments are going to develop over time, you know, if this were to go through, given virtually no room for curbside parking on these 2 houses. In fact, it'll be virtually one large driveway apron, starting with the Diaz house, continuing right over to the Rooney house. That may be a little snide, but actually, it's not far off. All right. The low-traffic dead end of the cul-de-sac is a natural magnet for children to play. They ride their bikes, they skate, they play ball at the circle end, and the negative slope from Thompson Hill down the hill to the circle adds to their fun. It is a pleasant feeling to see the kids enjoying themselves in healthy play. My neighbor Brian Miller, Mr. Miller, taught his daughter how to ride a bike in the cul-de-sac, and he didn't have to worry about dodging traffic or cars. An example of young bikers using the circle is shown in photograph 6, just taken the other day. Just happened to be walking out my driveway, and I saw them, said, "Whoa, take a picture." Mothers find it a safe jaunt for strolling with baby carriages, and neighbors from Thompson Hill Road find it pleasant for walking their dogs. This is all part of the neighborhood character. It's a safe haven. Since the cul-de-sac is used by pedestrians, care is essential for backing cars out of the driveways and accelerating to exit the road. There's a missing photo 7. It doesn't matter. Photo 8 shows recently renovated athletic field at the Country Harbor Day School, situated at the junction of Thompson Hill and Skunks Hollow Road. It draws a good crowd for soccer games and other events, lacrosse and what have you, particularly on weekends. See photo P9. These events draw many cars. Last week I counted more than 30 parked cars. See picture 10. Now they used to park on our street, and I think someone read the riot act to these people, nice people, and now they park just on the athletic field itself. But you still have a lot of human traffic, kids walking onto the street, playing while, you know, brothers and sisters are enjoying competitive sport. And then when they come and go, and it's not one game, it's game after game after game. So a good part of the late morning to late afternoon, you have all this traffic coming and going right near the intersection of those 2 roads. And by adding 2 more houses, and I don't know how many cars, whether they're teenagers or they're you know, young enough and they zip-zoo in their cars, it just adds to the risk. Not saying it's fundamental, but it adds to the risk. And I'm not complaining about it. I like watching the kids play soccer. I'm an old soccer nut. Bottom line, this plan to overdevelop Harbor Brook in a manner never designed for means gutting the tree vista, more lights, noise, cars. I've been through this. Just be honest, the neighborhood will be permanently damaged and far from improved, more like degraded. The last one is rather quick. Driveway separation standards. Has the town highway department seriously addressed the safety issue of the proposed 4 driveways between lots 5 and 6? I searched the town's website and could not find anything resembling a design standard that fits this situation. Perhaps there is one, but I couldn't find it. Therefore, I searched other towns, and I found one in the city of Durango, Colorado, popped right up, which went into detailed specificity for cul-de-sac connection separation standards. Durango has similar four seasons as we do: snow, hot summer, rain, so they have all the same things. It's not like they're in the tropics. The key diagram in this municipal standard I put in Figure 5, it's the last page on your package. Applying this standard to this application, where we have four nearly contiguous driveways, requires a minimum of 103 feet along the curb between the closest edges of the Rooney and Diaz driveway aprons. And I was optimistic in saying it's only a 10-foot wide driveway that they're putting in, and we'll let them be as close as 3 or 4 feet apart on the two middle ones. But you got to be 40 feet on either side, and then add the 10 and the 10 and the 3 or whatever it is. You add up to a lot of space to meet that standard, and that's a well-thought-out standard. You know, their standard is not a diagram, it's a book. It's all the things you got to do when you build cul-de-sacs in their town, and it's a good-sized town. You couldn't come close to meeting that requirement with proposal. So I claim it is unsafe, it is unsightly, and it's wrong. And the question is, to what standard will the town of Smithtown hold the applicant to for his driveway connections to the cul-de-sac? That is a question. I don't know. I couldn't find it. That there's got to be one, and if you don't have one, I don't know what you're going to do. The only thing you can do is reject the application, because it just doesn't work. Use Durango's standard. Another variance. All right, I'm closing my comments. Thank goodness. It is my understanding that the zoning board makes its judgment based on the merits of enforcing conformance with the ordinances by balancing the good of all concerned parties. I agree with that. Hopefully applying the silver rule, which is to do no harm or to minimize harm if harm is unavoidable. The beneficiaries in this application would be a non-resident builder, the current non-resident property owners, O'Berry and Piesankowski, and the town, each of which benefits financially. On the other hand, the existing community of 8 families will be harmed, left with the lasting negative impact to the neighborhood and benefit nothing else as a result. Every one of the residents strongly supports that this application be denied. If approved, instead, the board will be setting a dangerous precedent that every last patch of nature and space in Smithtown will be allowed to be developed regardless of its incongruity. Knowing that the zoning board's mission is to serve the good of the community, I cannot believe it would support such a flawed application. And lastly, and once again I will mention, the de facto deed restriction is a major concern. It remains in force, these are what deeds are, and cannot be overtaken by time and events. The deed restriction runs with the land, and waiving it is beyond the authority of the town to change it. I ask you, please, summarily reject this application. Thank you for your patience in hearing me out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? That's it?
Boy, I wish I had that man's determination and stature. You really did a great job. Thank you, sir. However, first of all,
the town had noticed. This is an application that's before the planning board and this board probably for the last 3 years. So there's no question of whether the town knew about it or didn't know about it. More importantly, I'd like to thank the counselor and this gentleman, the guy on the end there with the beard, for bringing up a very important point. There is a deed, and they're right. And that deed was a deed of dedication to the town for highway purposes. This is exactly what we are doing. If you look at the kind of crazy triangular area, that's an town indicated a highway purposes and up a hill. It includes any highway purpose. I think that if you direct, I guess, an attorney now because Mr. Pizzulli recused himself, to check into the office has probably done 1,000 of them. Highway purposes is not limited to a road. You can define what highway means, but we've made, I don't know, maybe 500 or 600 deeds for highway purposes, for drainage, for access, for a million other things. So, and another thing that's very important is the town doesn't have a right to impose a landlocked situation on a piece of property. The town must give access unless that property was dedicated for park purposes. This was not. It was dedicated for highway purposes, precisely what we're talking about here. Your town attorney will hopefully will check it out, and we'll see over the course of years this was all talked about with the prior planning applications, with the prior planner, or 2 prior planners ago, Frank DeRuby. Thank those 2 gentlemen for bringing up the deed. Maybe they can get a copy of it so I don't have to get it from the title company, which, by the way, a title company ensures access, and if there's any concern, and that survey might show a concern, the title company is going to say, you better make sure you have access because they insure it. Now, the mention of, which bothers me a lot, yeah, it's a contract vendee situation, and the contract vendee is a builder, and the contract vendors are Pezankowski and Oberry, and they own the, in America, this is capitalism. If you have a right to build, and that's why we're coming before this, we have a right to pursue that. There's nothing wrong with making money unless we're in a different country now. And sure, I'd like to have 1.5 acres next to me and not have to pay taxes on it and be able to. That's not the way it works. So, oh, and the zoning line. Gentleman talked about the zoning line. The commercial property, when you go back, if you picture the fire department, that area there, and what used to be Kenny Moore's funeral parlor, which is now an office building, zoning line. It's central business in the moving from that zoning going down 21 that property anyway. That zone it was owned commercially use that property. It's not allowed unless you got to change the zone, and I'm sure none of the neighbors would be happy about that. With respect to flooding, We all know that if this application is approved, the engineering department goes through this property with a fine-tooth comb and requires all types of drainage. You have to maintain the water on your own property. You can't let it run into the cul-de-sac, which apparently happens now with the existing homes. As far as trees, and the last gentleman indicated it, there's a tree clearing plan. The builder would be fined a tremendous amount of money if he cut one more tree down than what was allowed in the tree clearing plan. This goes on every time we do a subdivision in the town, and the environmental department is very particular about marking trees and making sure we didn't cut down a tree that we didn't put on the map and they approved. The only people that can cut down trees are homeowners after they buy the house, or any existing homeowner. I believe the rule is they can cut up to 10 trees a year. They can cut them down. They don't need anybody's approval. So again, I ask the board for its favorable consideration. I know you have to wait for planning board's recommendation, but also for everybody's benefit, whoever you're going to ask to check into it in the town attorney's office, to look at that deed, because that's what that deed's all about, to give us access or anybody else. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
Do we need to close or do we need to keep the application open if we're gonna request anything from the town attorney, just in case anyone wants to rebut
Oh.
what they find?
All right.
And just close it at the point we, I don't know.
You want to keep it open then?
I think if we're gonna get information that
They want to say.
anyone wants to rebut, we should keep it open and then close it when we get the information.
All right. Let me get a date.
I think you have to keep it open anyway.
Oh, for planning, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Planning board.
Yep, we do.
If it would be all right, we could submit a written submission on that issue.
I'm sorry, you what?
On the issue that the town attorney is going to look into, keeping the record open, we could provide our own position in the written submission.
At that
Yeah.
hearing, they'd be able to. Yeah.
Or prior to, whatever.
Yeah, as long as it's in before we close the hearing.
What do you want to do?
Huh? August.
This time,
Oh, I don't know. Do we need to keep it open for planning
with planning
or
board.
just the town attorney?
If you're planning on making a request to the town attorney for information about a reading of the deed and the intent and the language, to come back with that information, I would say probably adjourn it, like maybe to the beginning of November.
Yeah, November 12th. We'll adjourn it to November 12th. This way, give everybody sufficient time. Oh, yeah, on whatever date I just gave. I'm
November
sorry.
12th.
November 12th.
No, November 12th.
Okay, what am I doing? We gotta go start all over again. Okay? Okay, ready?
I think we're done.
Make a comment?
Or adjourn?
1 second. I want to clarify, when I researched highway use, it was,
Close the hearing, Mr. Chairman.
Huh?
no, he doesn't want to hear that.
Yeah, but I think we're not allowed, he's supposed to
Oh.
have the last word, so
Yeah.
we can't.
Come on.
Would you call me?
No.
That's not nice.
Oh, enough.
I think he's afraid.
Me too.
You all right, Rick? We got another case, don't we?
Yeah, but
No.
You're not here?
that's the one where the garage was 5 foot from the property line, And I think you or Blaze made the suggestion of moving it and extending it the length of the
Right,
footprint of
make
the
it a
house.
little bit, right.
Yeah, he said no.
King took it back to his client. Client said, no. I
All
don't
right,
wanna
so
do
we're
it."
just closing it.
So we're just going to read the case and close it.
Okay.
And then we can act on it if you wanted to. All right.
We do have one more case.
Yeah, you want to clear this place?
Yeah, one more.
All right, let's read it.
All right, let me,
Okay? Do this real quick. Last case on the agenda, case number 18210.
Wait till they,
Yeah.
okay. Good night.
Okay.
Sure, please.
Case number 18210, Vincenzo Puglisi, 6 Shoreview Court, Wisconsin. Location of the property, the south side of Shoreview Court, 238 feet west of Lake Avenue. The property is zoned R15. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum side yard from 16 feet to 5 feet, to reduce total side yards from 34 feet to 31 feet for a proposed 696 square foot garage addition. Just to refresh everybody's memory, Don King presented this application at the last BZA meeting. There was a recommendation made on the record that the applicant consider revising their plans to change the dimensions of the size of the garage so that they could actually have a bigger garage than what they were proposing, but they would provide a 10-foot side yard setback. Mr. King said that he would bring that information back to his client and ask his client if he was so inclined to go along with that. In a letter he sent to planning and the board, he said that his applicant wishes to proceed with the 5-foot side yard setback.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to close the hearing then.
Yes. Can I have,
Yes.
can I have a motion to close this application?
Yes.
Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Application closed. And that concludes our hearing for tonight.
All right.